Kimi K3, a 2.78 trillion parameter AI model, now runs off a $200 SSD. Your CTO's data center excuse just expired this week. I'm Stewart Vickers. If you're paying 6 figures a year to OpenAI or Anthropic, this week is a receipt you need. 3 moves. Kimi K3 became runnable on a workstation, not a cluster. Alibaba open-weighted a model that beats every US system except Claude. A smaller Qwen release dropped that runs on a gaming PC. And the last story is the one nobody saw coming. I asked Claude Opus 5 what all this means. It told on itself on camera. Here's the punchline. A tiny team called SQLite AI shipped a piece of code called Waste that runs the biggest open-weighter AI model on the planet from a single NVMe drive. No GPU cluster, no rented cloud rack, no H100 farm. A workstation. The exact box someone in your office is playing Rocket League on at 6 p.m. It just became a frontier model server. Waste stands for Wait Aware Streaming Tensor Engine. Ignore the name, here's what it does. Kimi K3 is a Chinese frontier model, 2.78 trillion parameters. It came out of Moonshot AI, and until this week it was in the same category as GPT-6 or Claude Opus 5. You could rent access, you couldn't run your own copy. To even attempt it, you needed 8 H100 GPUs. $200,000 of hardware, minimum, before you plugged anything in. The Waste engine changes the architecture completely. It keeps the small always-on core of the model in RAM, roughly the part every question needs, and streams the specific expert weights it needs from an NVMe SSD on demand. Think of it as a library where you don't own all the books at once, you pull the one the reader asked for and put it back. I ran the numbers live before this shoot. The full Kimi K3 model file is 1.45 terabytes. It fits on a 2 terabyte NVMe drive that costs £150 retail. The old floor was an 8H100 rack at around $200,000. The new floor is a workstation with a fast SSD. The Waste repo is public at github.com/SQLiteAI/waste. 1,500 stars, 111 forks. Here's why this matters to you and not to your developer. The reason your SaaS contract is $20 to $200 per seat per month is not that OpenAI's model is worth that. It's that your vendor was pricing in hardware you couldn't buy. Take away the hardware moat and the entire subscription argument becomes a support contract in a trench coat. Ask what you're actually renting, because starting this week the answer might be nothing but convenience and a login page. Convenience is fine, enterprises pay for it every day. But convenience priced at 6 figures a year is what happens right before a cheaper competitor eats your best customer. Every operator who moves in the next 90 days is buying an option on a very different cost structure. Everyone who doesn't is buying next year's crisis. And a competitor doesn't need to be smarter than you. A competitor just needs the same output for 0 per seat and the discipline to pass the savings on. Story 2. Alibaba just showed OpenAI what an open-weighter release actually looks like when a company means it. The Verge broke it Monday morning. Alibaba released Qwen 3.8 Max, their largest and most capable model ever built. 2.4 trillion parameters. It sits alongside Kimi K3 as the biggest open-weighter AI releases in history. On the LM Arena Tech's leaderboard, the human-voted quality ranking every serious AI lab quietly obsesses over because it's the only benchmark real users vote on, Qwen 3.8 Max sits second in the entire world. The only models ranked above it are Claude Opus variants and Fable 5. Every OpenAI model, every Google model, every Meta model, all of them, below it. On front-end coding tasks, only 2 Claude Opus versions and Moonshot's Kimi K3 beat it. On visual analysis, only Fable 5 is ahead. And Alibaba said the plain text version of it, the open weights, ships publicly next week. No API contract, no rate limit, no per token pricing, free download forever for anyone with a Hugging Face account. Line up your last 12 months of AI vendor invoices. Now imagine your finance team at renewal, staring at a free open weight model that is measurably better than every US closed system except one. Your vendor's pricing power depended on you not knowing there was a serious alternative. You know now. Meanwhile, your marketing agency's writing rates are pinned to a subscription bill that just became a discretionary line item. Their operating cost dropped, and their client, you, just saw the receipt. The pass-through savings show up next quarter, or someone else eats their account. The question your CFO is going to ask you before August is a simple one. Why are we still paying full price? And the honest answer is you're paying for switching cost, not for capability. The gap closes fast. And if you're sitting there thinking, fine, but I still don't have the hardware to run a 2.4 trillion parameter monster, the very next release is aimed at exactly you. Story 3. The trillion parameter models get the headlines. The 82 billion parameter model that dropped in the same release is what you're actually going to run in your business. Alongside K3.8 Max, Alibaba shipped Qwen 3.8 in a smaller version, roughly 82 billion parameters. Small in this context is a slightly ridiculous word. It just means one fast workstation can run it, instead of a rack. Daniel Han from Unslath, the guy whose team does the community optimization work that lets any of these models actually fit on real hardware people own, publicly validated that Qwen 3.8 in that size will run on consumer gear. What that means for a business owner: a workstation costing £3,000 to £5,000 now runs a model that a year ago required a data center contract and cost $0 per seat, per month, per user, forever, because the weights are yours to keep. Here's the make versus buy math your CTO probably hasn't run this week. If you're paying £25,000 a month across your team for closed model AP is, and you drop £5,000 on a workstation, you break even in 6 days. 6 days. Everything after day 6 is money you keep, not money you rent. A workstation is a fixed asset that depreciates on your books over 3 years. An API subscription is an operating expense that shows up on every P&L until you cancel it. Your accountant will thank you. Your investors will thank you, your future self will thank you, and your vendor account manager will not. Open the LM Arena text leaderboard yourself right now. Not because I said so. Look at the top 10. Count how many are open weighted Chinese models you could download today. Real proof of what's happening, not me telling you. If you want the weekly version of this breakdown, subscribe. Free. One story left, the one nobody saw coming. It came out of an experiment I ran an hour before this video. I asked Claude Opus 5, Anthropic's flagship, the exact model that has the most to lose from everything I just told you, what it means when a 2.78 trillion parameter open weight AI runs off a $200 drive. Under 55 words, no hedging. Here is verbatim what Anthropic's own model said. Your vendor's moat was never the model. It was the hardware you couldn't afford. The 2.78 T parameter open weight model streaming off a $200 NVMe drive means frontier capability is now a storage purchase, not a subscription. Your 6 figures buys convenience and a support contract. Price it that way at renewal. Claude Opus 5, running on Anthropic's own servers, just diagnosed its own market position on camera. Frontier capability is a storage purchase, not a subscription. The model saying that is the one you're paying 6 figures a year to access. Think about that for a second. So what are you actually renting? Convenience, real product. Enterprises pay for it every day, but convenience priced at 6 figures is a negotiable line item, not a fixed cost of doing business. If your vendor won't drop you to a fair convenience price at renewal, someone will run the alternative for you and quote it at a fraction of your current bill, and they're already quoting. A wave of smaller consultancies is about to knock on the doors of every mid-market operator paying enterprise SaaS pricing for AI. Not next year, between now and Christmas. Here's what to do this week. Ask your developer or agency to spike Qwen 3.8 on a rented workstation, running one bounded workflow you already pay an API bill for. Support triage, doc drafting, internal search, pick one, measure output quality and cost per query against your current spend. If the numbers land where I think they will, you walk into the renewal with hard proof of an alternative. If they don't, you have a baseline. Either way, you stop guessing. Everything I broke down today, the self-host cost calculator I use internally, the workstation spec I'd hand my own team, the exact model list for pilots this month, lives in the Church of SEO Jesus. My free school community, free to join, link in the description and the pinned comment. And if you want the weekly version of this, next up on your screen is last week's roundup, the one where a different Chinese lab quietly ate another US vendor's lunch. Play it.